Hey y'all, Data Guy here. And with the release, actually a couple weeks late I am this time, of Airflow 2.10, has a lot of exciting upgrades, a lot of exciting changes, and is really starting to set the stage for the next big upgrade. We may see an Airflow 2.11, but the really next big upgrade that I'm waiting for is Airflow 3.0. So that should be coming in spring of 2025. But before we get to that, here in 2.10, we have a lot of really cool upgrades to the executor, how that functions, adding some additional flexibility there. We have some things around data sets, upgrading the capabilities with data sets, making them a little bit more dynamic, making their metadata more consumable. We have a nice, sexy little dark mode as well, better task instance history, better dataset UI, and really just a whole slew of kind of expanding some features, expanding features that were released in almost a beta stage, like that datasets UI. So this really is taking those, moving them into the next level, and adding a lot of features and functionality that make them much more useful in the real world. So without further ado, let's go piece by piece and go through everything that is new in Airflow 2.10. So the first major change, and something that people have been asking for a long time, is the ability to now have both Kubernetes and Celery executors on the same environment. You can change this by just going to, actually let me look it up, executor config. So here, the variable you're going to want to look for is executor executor, and then let's find the final one. So here we go down to Kubernetes executor. So right now it's using local executor, but now you can have things like local executor, comma, Celery executor, comma, Kubernetes executor, and you can pass these in your Airflow configuration. First one will be the default executor for that environment, but at the DAG level, you can actually specify different executors to use for specific tasks. So if we go in here, and one second, let me find one. Works. So here you have the ability to now say, hey, for a specific task, so you just have a Python task that's decorated. Instead of needing to use the Kubernetes pod executor, you can just choose to use the Kubernetes executor. And then similarly at the DAG level, you can just type in, hey, this is the executor I want to use, and this will apply to every task within that DAG. So really easy way to mix and match what executor you're using without needing to do kind of workarounds like a Kubernetes pod operator on top of a Celery executor, and then you're taking up a Celery slot and a Kubernetes slot, so it's not really the most efficient way of doing it. So just really great quality of life feature there. Now, the next big feature is the ability to have now the DataSetAlias class, which is creating a custom dataset at runtime that can be passed as a value in the outlets and inlets of a task and then be used to schedule downstream. So an instance of DataSetAlias is resolved dynamically to create a real dataset, and then downstream DAG can either depend on the resolved dataset or the alias itself. So you don't necessarily need to know the exact dataset name. You can create an alias that links to what that dataset might produce upstream. So it allows you to have, let's say, a unique dataset ID for every day rather than reusing the same dataset. And so the DataSetAlias name, or DataSetAlias, just has one argument name that's going to identify the dataset. So the task needs to first declare the alias as an outlet. So you see here, DataSetAlias, my alias name, and then your alias name is set up here, just how you would set a dataset name. And then down here, what we're doing is yielding metadata where we're actually giving that dataset alias a dataset URI that corresponds to this specific DAG run. So this is then going to update the URI dataset, but we can use this dataset alias in downstream tasks to actually to reference that specific dataset and then see, hey, this is that URI rather than just dataset alias. So here, if I go to downstream alias, you'll see the code here. It just needs to reference that downstream alias rather than the actual URI that's going to be generated by that upstream task. And then you can also do things like scheduling, based on dataset alias or the real dataset. So if you wanted to go to, let's see, this one. So this is a dataset with the actual URI in there. And then if I go back, let's see, downstream dataset A, here, see, you can choose the exact dataset you want to be triggering from upstream. So this is where also, hey, if I actually want, I might be creating one of 3 datasets, then if it's data set A, this is going to trigger downstream data set A. If it's going to trigger data set B, it's going to trigger downstream data set B. And you can kind of see how this all works here. So a lot of different ways you now have additional flexibility to use data sets, have them kind of linked between two different DAGs, but also have the ability to have different dataset URIs for different datasets between DAG runs. So really, really big enhancement there to how dataset works. And then it also pairs really well with the dataset URI, or new dataset UI. And so here you can actually see a dependency graph where this is, you have this upstream dataset alias DTM, and it creates this empty set of aliases. So here, instead of needing to know, again, you have your dataset alias to reference this object, and then anything that's created under that alias will trigger this downstream on alias DTM. You can see all these working where, hey, both of these can both produce the same alias, and if either of them produces a data set, then that's going to produce downstream on alias, and then this can be an and or, so it could be only if both of them have produced to that alias. You can attach extra info, so you can actually have two different DAG, or you can have one DAG that produces two data sets with two different pieces of info, one that has extra info, one that doesn't. Just, again, really wanted to show off all the flexibility that you have there. And then another really, really cool feature is now the ability to set the dark mode in the Airflow UI. So if you click on this gear icon, it should be a crescent icon actually, you'll switch to Airflow dark mode. And people really, really love dark mode. So you know that people had to get what they wanted with Airflow. And so here now you can see everything within the Airflow UI rendered in dark mode. So you don't have to rely on third-party software to actually give dark mode to your Airflow experience. Now, the next feature I want to talk about is the ability to now go in and really see more detailed history about a task run history. So let's say if I go into, just pick DAG test example, I want to pick on dog check availability. Now, when a task is tried or retried or cleared, its execution history is actually maintained. And so what you do is you can click on the details tab here, and then what you can see if I click on a particular task, you can see the different render templates, and then you should be able to see, so let's see, task retry, let me mark state as, or let's try clearing it and rerunning it, and then this should tell me the different times that I have either stopped or retried. So boom, now you can see your task retries. So let's say I mark it as failed now. I'm just going to mark this as failed, mark it as success again, see if that works. So it doesn't do mark as success, but if you try, retry, so if you have this automated into your task where it's going to retry upon failure, you'll now see actually that first failure and then the retry after, rather than the retry overwriting the previous logs. So really useful for debugging purposes and being able to see, hey, I can check all my historical task runs. If I do need to retry it, just to see if it'll work again, I don't lose that information that caused that initial failure, so I can still kind of test it. Will this simple fix work? If not, go back to the actual error and back to the drawing board. But just a nice little quality of life improvement and improving visibility in between different task runs, now that you have many more instances when you might be running or rerunning a task many times, especially for things like ML workflows. Similarly, you do have a much more improved UI for the actual dataset events as well. So now instead of that kind of just list of, hey, everything that happened, you can actually see, hey, these are the updates to the values, the items that got changed, the output.txt. You can see where things were stored, have that dependency graph, better visibility in between different runs as well. So just nicer UI here with timestamps, and also you can see, hey, what are the consuming DAGs, direct link to any DAGs that were triggered by this, is turning this more into that single source of truth. And then also now you have these in different tabs. So you can kind of just filter out, hey, I just want to look at data sets, I just want to look at data set events, I want to look at dependency graph, click into a data set, have a much better screen for looking at the different data set events in kind of a separate area. And then also within the actual data set event, you can see what were changed, which just makes this actually a source of truth for, hey, what's happening with my different data sets. And also, yeah, better data visibility. You also have the option to toggle data sets in the graph view. So if I go to this graph view here, I can choose to toggle these. So these are OR statements. And so here now you can say, hey, if one or the other is created, rather than just having like all these link in. Now you can actually see the logic that dictates, hey, is this allowed to happen only if these three actually created and combined to create the master data set that's then going to be put in this combined outputs. So just, again, better visibility into actually how data sets are interacting with your DAG code. And then for a particular DAG run, you can also see the linkage to the dataset event that triggered that. So if I go into this, I can go view the dataset and see actually when this happened to see what triggered this DAG run and then tie back to that dataset action that occurred there. So again, better traceability if you need to go back and see, hey, how did this dataset interact with my code? And then another nice little quality of life feature is reparse DAGs within the UI. So no longer do you have to run a CLI command or reload your Airflow environment or do anything like that. You can just reparse a DAG directly in the UI. Don't have to have that kind of waiting period for actually needing to wait for some code to change out and then write some code, have that DAG parser pick it up 30 seconds later. So I am internally thankful for this one because that was the biggest pain in my ass, is having to wait for DAG code changes to appear in here. So hugely excited about that one, even though it might seem like kind of a simple feature. And that's really all the major features. There's two other kind of little small ones, which is that deferrable executors can now execute directly from the trigger without needing to go through a worker. So that's really efficient for sensor operators. So you don't actually need to spin up a worker to trigger that sensor operator. And then also, crucial executor logs are now integrated into the task logs. So if an executor fails to start a task, the relevant error messages will be available in the task logs. So making that debugging process even easier, giving you that single pane of glass. And that is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy Airflow 2.10, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Data Guy out.